Hidden faces of terror, killers who mock the police. Imagine for a moment you're investigating a series of brutal murders. Evidence is scarce, clues lead to dead ends, and then a letter arrives. A letter from the killer himself, mocking your work, taunting your intelligence, turning a serious investigation into a sadistic game of cat and mouse. This is not fiction. This is the terrifying reality that some of history's most disturbing serial killers have forced upon authorities. Today, we'll delve into the dark minds of those who not only killed for pleasure, but who found additional satisfaction in publicly humiliating those sworn to protect society. These are the hidden faces of terror, murderers who turned their atrocities into media spectacles, openly defying the law and mocking those who tried to stop them. Prepare yourself for a disturbing journey through the most shocking cases in modern criminology, where the line between reality and nightmare becomes dangerously thin. If you have the courage to face the truth behind these monsters, stay with us. But I warn you, once you hear these stories, they will remain etched in your memory forever. The clown who fooled everyone. John Wayne Gacy was the embodiment of horror hidden behind a mask of normalcy. By day, he was a respected businessman, an active member of the community, a man who donned clown costumes to entertain children in hospitals and at parties. By night, he transformed into the killer clown, a predator who victimized at least 33 young people between 1968 and 1978. But what made Gacy truly terrifying wasn't just his crimes. It was his ability to manipulate and mock the justice system. During his interactions with the police, Gacy displayed a disconcerting arrogance. Not only did he deny any involvement in the disappearances, but he did so with a smile on his face, as if relishing every moment of the investigators' confusion. The most shocking moment came when police finally obtained a warrant to search his property in December 1978. As officers excavated his yard and found body after body buried beneath his home, Gacy remained calm, offering investigators coffee and joking about the stench emanating from his property. He even went so far as to tell officers they were digging in the wrong place, knowing full well that there were more than 24 decomposed bodies beneath his feet. During interrogations, Gacy adopted an almost theatrical demeanor. He spoke of his victims as if they were disposable objects, referring to them as those boys, with a coldness that chilled the blood of even the most seasoned investigators. His ability to maintain this facade of normalcy while describing unimaginable atrocities revealed a deeply disturbed mind, someone who had transformed murder into a macabre art form. What haunted investigators most was the realization that Gacy felt no remorse. He felt pride. Pride in having deceived everyone for so long. Pride in having built a respectable reputation while piling up bodies on his property. This pride manifested itself in his constant need to provoke and humiliate those who tried to unravel his crimes. Letters from hell. While Gacy taunted the police in person, other killers took a more elaborate approach. They wrote. And we're not talking about confessions or pleas for help. We're talking about carefully crafted letters designed to humiliate, provoke, and terrorize not only investigators, but the public at large. The most famous case is undoubtedly that of the Zodiac Killer, who terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area in the late 1960s and early 1970s. This unidentified killer didn't just kill. He turned his crimes into a public spectacle, sending coded letters to local newspapers, taunting police with false and true clues mixed together in a deliberately confusing narrative. His letters often began with the threatening phrase, "This is the Zodiac speaking." Each correspondence was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation, designed to sow terror in the public and frustration in the authorities. He included intimate details of the crimes that only the killer could know, establishing his credibility before moving on to the most cruel provocations. One of his most disturbing letters was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle in July 1969. In it, Zodiac claimed that killing gave him the most thrilling feeling and that he was collecting slaves for his afterlife. But what really chilled investigators was his threat to kill a dozen people if his figures weren't published on the front page of the newspapers. He wasn't just killing, he was dictating the rules of the game for the entire society. The BTK killer, Dennis Rader, took this tactic to an even more sinister level. During his decades of criminal activity, Rader sent a series of letters and packages to the media and authorities, always signed with his self-proclaimed code name, BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill. His correspondence was accompanied by detailed drawings of his costumes, photographs of his victims, and, most disturbingly, poems and stories that romanticized his crimes. Rader displayed an almost childish delight in taunting the police. In one of his most arrogant communications, he criticized the quality of the police investigation, offering tips on how to improve their work and suggesting that investigators weren't smart enough to catch him. His need for attention was so great that, after years of silence, he began communicating with authorities again simply because he felt he was being forgotten. The cannibal gentleman. But not all the killers who taunted the police were shadowy figures lurking on the fringes of society. Some were charming, polite, intellectually sophisticated, and perhaps for that very reason, all the more terrifying. Jeffrey Dahmer epitomized this kind of horror, a man who could hold civilized conversations about literature and philosophy while describing, in clinical detail, how he dismembered and consumed his victims. When Dahmer was finally captured in July 1991, his demeanor during interrogation shocked even the most experienced investigators. He didn't deny his crimes. On the contrary, he described them with a scientific precision that was both fascinating and disgusting. But what disturbed the officers most was his way of talking about his atrocities, as if he were discussing a dinner recipe. During one of the longest interrogation sessions, Dahmer explained in detail his process of seduction, murder, and dismemberment, pausing occasionally to ask if the investigators would like water or coffee. This juxtaposition of social courtesy and confessions of cannibalism created a surreal atmosphere that made the officers genuinely uncomfortable. Dahmer knew exactly what he was doing. He was demonstrating that, even as a prisoner, he still maintained a certain degree of control over the situation. His intellectual arrogance manifested itself in subtle but deeply disturbing ways. He corrected investigators' medical terminology, offered insights into criminal psychology, and even suggested that his crimes might have scientific value in the study of the human mind. Dahmer had transformed his own monstrosity into a kind of academic work, and he clearly expected others to recognize his contribution to human knowledge. The most shocking aspect of his confessions was not the graphic details, although those were gruesome enough, but his insistence that he was being honest and cooperative. Dahmer presented his complete lack of remorse as a virtue, as if his willingness to discuss his crimes in clinical detail were a favor he was doing society. This reversal of moral values revealed a mind that had completely lost touch with basic humanity. Deadly mind games, the ability of some killers to psychologically manipulate their victims, investigators, and even the judicial system reveals a particularly sinister dimension of criminality. These were not crimes of passion or desperation. They were carefully orchestrated performances, designed to maximize not only the suffering of the victims, but also the frustration and humiliation of those charged with delivering justice. Ted Bundy elevated this manipulation to an art form. During his trials, he dismissed his lawyers and chose to represent himself, transforming the courtroom into his personal stage. Bundy used his natural charm and sharp wit to seduce not only his victims, but also jurors, reporters, and even some investigators. He knew exactly how to project an image of a respectable young college student who had been wrongly accused of terrible crimes. His tactics were simultaneously brilliant and repugnant. During interrogations, Bundy adopted a consultant-like posture, offering insights into the minds of serial killers as if he weren't one himself. He discussed similar cases with academic authority, suggesting psychological profiles and investigative strategies, always maintaining an intellectual distance from his own crimes. This ability to dissociate himself from his actions while demonstrating intimate knowledge of them created an atmosphere of surrealism that left investigators genuinely confused. What made Bundy particularly dangerous was his intuitive understanding of human psychology. He knew how to exploit social expectations, how to use his appearance and upbringing to disarm suspicion, how to manipulate sympathy, and even how to turn his victims into unwitting accomplices in his own murders. During his final confessions, he described these tactics with evident pride, as if sharing professional secrets with co-workers. Aileen Wuornos represented the other end of the spectrum, a killer who mocked society through her brutal honesty about her motivations and methods. Unlike other serial killers who attempted to construct complex narratives about childhood trauma or mental illness, Wuornos simply stated that she killed because she enjoyed it and because her victims deserved to die. This disconcerting frankness was, in itself, a form of provocation. During her trials, Wuornos frequently disrupted proceedings, with angry outbursts directed not only at the prosecutors, but also at her own lawyers, the judge, and the judicial system as a whole. She accused everyone of conspiracy, corruption, and incompetence, turning each hearing into a spectacle of hostility and paranoia. Her refusal to accept any responsibility for her actions, combined with her willingness to verbally attack any authority figure, created an environment of constant tension that benefited only her. The media as an accomplice. One of the most disturbing aspects of these cases is how some killers managed to transform the media into an extension of their own psychological needs. They intuitively understood that, in the modern era, press attention could be as valuable as the act of murder itself. For these criminals, every headline was validation, every report a confirmation of their power over society. Son of Sam, David Berkowitz, exemplified the symbiotic relationship between killer and media. His letters to newspapers and authorities weren't just confessions or provocations. They were carefully crafted press releases designed to maximize media coverage and public panic. Berkowitz understood that by giving his crimes a name and a personality, he could control the narrative in ways other killers never could. His communications revealed a sophisticated understanding of how the media worked. He knew that stories about serial killers sold newspapers, attracted audiences, and generated conversations. More importantly, he knew that by constantly feeding the media with new material, letters, clues, threats, he could remain in the spotlight indefinitely. Each communication was timed to maximize impact. Each revelation was measured to maintain public interest. The Zodiac Killer case took this manipulation even further. His ciphers and codes weren't just communication tools. They were entertainment products designed to engage the public in his macabre game. By challenging newspaper readers to decipher his messages, the Zodiac turned the entire population of the San Francisco Bay Area into unwitting participants in his crimes. Ordinary people spent hours trying to solve his puzzles, discussing his letters, speculating about his identity, exactly what he wanted. This strategy was diabolical in its simplicity. By involving the public in the decoding process, Zodiac ensured that his crimes would remain in the collective consciousness long after his actual activity. He had created a legacy that would continue to generate attention and fascination decades after his last known murders. For a pathological narcissist, this was the perfect immortality, the price of arrogance. But history teaches us a fundamental lesson. The arrogance that led these killers to defy the authorities often became the instrument of their own capture. Their compulsive need for attention, recognition, and control forced them to take ever greater risks, to leave ever more obvious clues, to maintain communication when silence would have guaranteed their freedom. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, perfectly exemplifies this irony. After years of silence, his need for attention forced him to re-establish contact with authorities in 2004, when he asked if he could communicate via floppy disk without being traced, and the police lied and said yes. Rader naively took their word for it. The floppy disk's metadata led directly to him, ending decades of investigation with a simple forensic analysis. Rader's capture revealed something even more disturbing. During all those years of silence, he had been hiding in plain sight. He was a respected public servant, a leader in his church, a seemingly normal family man. His ability to maintain this facade while constantly fantasizing about his past and future crimes demonstrated a level of psychological dissociation that defies comprehension. John Wayne Gacy was also a victim of his own arrogance. His insistence on keeping his victims so close, literally buried beneath his house, reflected a psychological need to maintain complete control over them, even after death. But this same need became his undoing when the smell of decomposition became undeniable and investigations focused on his property. During his confessions, Gacy admitted that he knew he would eventually be caught, but he couldn't stop. The combination of psychological compulsion and intellectual arrogance had created a self-destructive cycle he couldn't break. He needed to kill, but he also needed to keep trophies, and he also needed to provoke the authorities, each need fueling the others until the entire system collapsed. The dark legacy. The impact of these cases extends far beyond the direct victims and their families. They fundamentally changed how we investigate crimes, how we protect communities, and how we understand the nature of human evil. The techniques developed to capture these arrogant killers, psychological profiling, communications analysis, advanced forensics, have become standard tools in modern law enforcement. But perhaps the most disturbing legacy is how these cases altered our perception of safety and normalcy. The revelation that monsters can hide behind facades of respectability, that seemingly normal neighbors can harbor unimaginable secrets, that charming and intelligent people can be lethal predators. These lessons permanently changed how we evaluate the people around us. The public's fascination with these cases also raises uncomfortable questions about our own nature. Why are we so drawn to serial killer stories? What does it say about us that documentaries, books, and films about these criminals become commercial successes? Are we somehow giving them exactly what they've always wanted? Attention, notoriety, a form of immortality? These killers understood something fundamental about the human psyche, our fascination with the forbidden, our need to understand the incomprehensible, our compulsion to look at traffic accidents even when we know we shouldn't. They exploited this weakness, not only to satisfy their own psychological needs, but also to ensure their names would never be forgotten. The broken mirror of humanity. As we reach the end of this journey through the darkest minds in criminal history, it's impossible not to reflect on what these cases reveal about human nature, both theirs and ours. These killers who mocked the police weren't aliens or demons. They were human beings who chose to embrace the most destructive aspects of their psychology, transforming impulses most of us suppress into obsessions that consumed their entire lives. What makes these cases truly terrifying is not just the atrocities committed, but the reminder that the perpetrators walked among us. They frequented the same places, worked in the same offices, lived in the same neighborhoods. Their ability to maintain facades of normalcy while planning and executing unimaginable crimes forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Evil rarely announces its presence clearly, but there's also a lesson of hope in these dark stories. The arrogance that led these criminals to defy the authorities also hastened their captures. Their compulsive need for recognition and control forced them to take risks that eventually exposed them. Justice may be slow, but it is relentless, especially when confronted by those who openly defy it. The techniques developed to capture these killers continue to save lives today. Every communication analyzed, every pattern identified, every psychological profile constructed has contributed to an arsenal of knowledge that protects communities around the world. The legacy of these monsters, ironically, includes the tools we use to prevent others like them from thriving. If this exploration of the depths of human depravity has sparked your interest in criminology and criminal psychology, subscribe to our channel for more content examining history's most disturbing cases. Leave a like if you found the courage to read this far, and in the comments tell us which of these cases impacted you the most. What aspect of these killers' mindsets do you find most disturbing? Remember, knowing evil doesn't mean glorifying it. Understanding these cases helps us recognize the signs, protect the vulnerable, and ensure victims are never forgotten. True victory over these predators comes not only from their capture, but from our collective determination to build a society where such atrocities become increasingly difficult to commit and impossible to hide. Thank you for joining us on this dark journey. Until the next investigation.